Leadership historians capturing business and workplace cultures will write extensively about these times. Yes, about COVID-19 and the other pandemics that have beset the business world, and also about resources, human resources. With longer life expectancies, 5 generations now occupy the workplace. Leaders must focus on developing a culture of collaborative agreements, harmonious engagements, and cohesive team building. Understanding how to manage, develop, train, and lead each generation is one of the pathways to success. Research shows that the 5 generations, traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, also known as Gen Y, and the Gen Zers, each have unique characteristics that motivate and incentivize their behaviors. In order to execute goals and engineer expectations, leaders must be well versed in these characteristics. These are just a few tips offered by intergenerational experts for those leading multi generational teams. One, match the workforce to the customer base. Two, create councils and boards that are also intergenerational. And three, pay attention to employee demographics. To quote intergenerational expert Hayden Shaw, every generation in the workplace has value. Each has their own strengths, their own weaknesses, and their own unique tenets. Each is indispensable, and when they come together as a synergistic force, they can be unstoppable, end quote. Leaders, let's talk. Share with us your tips on how you successfully lead intergenerational teams. Matt, tossing to you. What are you saying about these 5 generations in the workplace?
Yeah, that's such a great point about there now being 5 generations in the workforce, with each bringing a distinct style and strength. One of the things that I've observed is how the education of younger generations is influencing their expectations and behaviors in the workplace. For instance, when my kids were going through elementary school, the classroom structure was completely different than the way I went to school. And it was much more of a Montessorial style, which promotes collaboration and self direction. Whereas my classroom, all the desks were lined up in rows facing the front of the classroom, looking at the teacher, and we were all just looking, learning from the teacher. My kids were all arranged in pods. They were all looking at each other and learning from one another. And the teacher was essentially off to the side and somewhat guiding them, but letting the kids self direct and determine how and what work would get done. And I think that this structure has encouraged kids to learn from one another, and they're bringing that sense of collaboration and self direction now into the workplace. So these school experiences are essentially having them expect a certain amount of empowerment and self-direction, and leaders will take note of that and learn that if they want to have a more motivated, self-empowered workforce, they'll allow these younger generations, especially Gen Z and young millennials, to work in the way that they were essentially raised. Kimberly, what are you seeing?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, you both have mentioned our unique 5 generations of the workforce today, and all have come from a variety of individual and cultural experiences. I might add that has obviously changed the way our work cultures and our leadership styles have to show up in order to meet the needs of this diverse workforce, right? You both have mentioned instead of looking at these multi-generational workforces as too complex or a hindrance, but to maybe look at it as a competitive edge, right? Different generations bring different viewpoints, which ultimately give us greater understanding of our diverse customer base, which ultimately unlocks growth. What about the way each generation approaches work? The workforce has evolved from a perspective of obedience, sacrifice for success, to demanding a quality manager, work life balance, and meaning and purpose of their company and their work. Our newer generations have demanded that we stand for something actively put our mouth and behaviors around it, and step out and leave a positive footprint in this world. What's wrong with that? The media has been quick to pigeonhole different generations, so let's be careful on stereotyping. The only way we'll really find out what your workforce really wants is to ask them. Look for the learning, both negative and positive. As leaders, we must now voice and act upon statements of inclusion, not only generational differences, but also unique differences. Let us choose to be collaborative, inclusive, and understanding, as you both have mentioned. Let us choose to embrace our huge asset of unique individuals as our competitive edge that collectively asks us to stand for purpose and great meaning, thanks to all of the generations.